Hi, everyone. I'm Dave.
And I'm Jeremy.
Welcome to our Tech Over Coffee podcast. We're excited to share this podcast with you from the main campus for Chipola College in Marianna, Florida. Chipola is a sponsor of our podcast, of our Tech Over Coffee, and they are so supportive. They have many opportunities for all stakeholders, for students to take courses, to work on certifications, associate's degrees, baccalaureate degrees, on a variety of topics, from accounting, business, computer systems. So many of the topics that we talk about, even management and finance, tie well to the programs at Chipola. So thank you, Chipola, for this opportunity.
Yeah. So today I think we're going to be talking about a fancy little proclamation by a guy named Gordon Moore.
Can you tell us more about that?
Sure. So if you don't know who this guy is, he's the guy that kind of coined the phrase and the theory of Moore's Law. So this is the idea that's kind of fundamental to the progress of computer technology. And it basically it was his realization that transistor size and densities will increase by double about every 2 years. And for the last 50 years or so, it's worked out that way.
So that law, that guideline of how transistors would become smaller and even more powerful has worked really well. And it's been a motivating factor. I know as a computer scientist, that's something that we were taught in school, something you were taught in school, Jeremy. And I would say it's a motivator. It's a good kind of framework of where to head with research, where to head with applications and operations work. But it's exciting is that now there are forces that are saying it's dead, it don't need it. So there's all kinds of angles for us to look at this exciting topic.
Right. So, I mean, let's kind of go back in time real quick. So, go back about 50 years, and you have IBM releasing the first supercomputer that has a memory size around like 10 megabytes or something like that. And you had Gordon Moore working at Intel, helping develop these new technologies and noticing that the increase in transistors in a computer chip has like substantially increased speeds. And then you jump forward these number of years and it's followed that kind of curve. And in about 2007, you actually had memory sizes in standard hard drives being about 1 terabyte. And it took at 50 years to go from the 10 megabyte hard drive to the 1 terabyte hard drive. And so that's a long degree of doubling, and it's doubling every 2 years, right? So then it only took 2 years to go from a 1 terabyte hard drive to a 2 terabyte hard drive. And then from there, we've gone from the supercomputer that required a forklift and planes to move around to little supercomputers in our pockets.
Yeah, I remember just in some undergraduate courses hearing about Moore's Law and the thought that I think it was, if you broke down the years as you just laid out, Jeremy, I think maybe initially for those 50 years, if you will, it was like maybe 18 months or something, every certain,
Yeah.
some kind of odd number like that it would double. And so that doubling went all the way to a terabyte, then 2 terabytes, and then where we're at today. So it's exciting. So there are many people out there, many tech-based consumers, tech-based researchers, entrepreneurs, and those that maybe don't understand Moore's Law or understand it well and say it's dead, as they're haters of it, saying, we can never do that again, or say it's dead because our technology has so far surpassed that law. So again, there's multiple ways for us to continue looking at it, and a great topic for us to,
Right. I mean,
to kick off with today.
you go a year back and you have the CEO of NVIDIA, Jensen Huang, proudly proclaiming to CES that Moore's Law is dead, and then proceeding to show how his graphics cards have had year-over-year gains. And so you have these people that are celebrating the idea of Moore's Law, but then also kind of proclaiming that, well, we don't have to stick by this 2 times density increase. We can go further. But then you have other companies like Intel, the place that Gordon Moore came up with this idea of saying that Moore's Law is dead because we've not been able to move past a 14 nanometer process in more like 4 years. So it's taken them a much longer amount of time. And the reality is that on the chip manufacturing side, with companies like TSMC, they're actually producing these chips and actually increasing the densities, but it's not in the same spectrum. So
We're using new technologies now.
right, yeah. I mean, there's movements to try to move away from silicon-based chips to trying to use things like silicon nitride or possibly diamonds or things like that. Create different types of processors that can perform and function beyond that transistor limit.
So the thought that it's possibly dead because from some lens we cannot continue the same 18-month doubling that has happened in the past, boy, that's a pessimistic approach, and I might look at that with a different lens. And then those saying our technology, maybe non-transistor based, but similar technologies are moving much faster, so it's dead in that sense. But it's exciting as both of those, if you take it as an opportunity to be more proactive, more optimistic, more encouraging for the opportunity, brings about new technologies and new research. For example, when you look at transistors and the ability to process at the smallest levels, bringing on nanotechnologies.
Right.
So there are some exciting
It's-
angles with this.
And it's what you almost have to do when you get down to transistors that are that small, because essentially the way it works is that we started with transistors that were the size of a human hair, which are you think is pretty small, but then you get into like 110 nanometers, and then that's like one of the first real like microchips. And then every year it basically cuts in, every 2 years it cuts in half. And then today we're functioning on 7 nanometer technologies with chip manufacturers trying to push for 3 nanometers. But the issue starts happening where like an atom is actually measured at about 1 nanometer. So we're getting to the size that these transistors are the size of an atom, and you can't get smaller than an atom unless, like you say, you go quantum.
And there's research that's happening in the quantum realm, something that hasn't been perfected quite yet, but if you use this optimistic lens of encouraging the same doubling of the 18-month period, which is a really good business cycle, that gives you a full business cycle and then part of another to do some research development and then to provide the product to consumers. So that tend to work well in the marketplace. But yeah, with some nanotechnology, with some quantum planning, some quantum mechanics, physics, they have solved it, but it's just not reliable. I haven't had a chance to read that in the last few days. But
What's interesting about that is that the big problem as you get smaller and smaller is that you're increasing this density so high that you're actually having the electrons just pass right through the transistors because they're so small that they basically don't even see them. The electrons are bigger than the transistors are themselves. So you have this increased heat density and control problem. And so with quantum computers, their big issue is actually heat. They have to use things like liquid nitrogen to keep it cool.
so in a test lab environment, you can have it work one time, but then other times it's kind of sporadic. So the chance to be able to make that reliable and something that you can roll out to the public is a goal with quantum research. And it's exciting that we've propelled and kind of pushed the marketplace to be utilizing such an advanced approach, or such an advanced technology for our computing power. I mean, who would have thought that? So-
Yeah, to go from a grain of sand to a functioning computer that can do anything we want. It's kind of amazing.
So what do you think of Moore's Law as a motivator in the marketplace, Jeremy? Do you see, I mean, how do you think Elon Musk, or how do you think Jeff Bezos sees this? Maybe instead of at a micro level, that might be the first step with our conversation, or the next step, but then maybe at the macro level, how can this expand just e-commerce? How can this expand space exploration? So
Yeah.
it's an exciting topic.
Well, going out into space, trying to find new materials that we might not have here on Earth, and it doesn't actually take all that much materials to like create a computer. It just requires a lot of equipment. An interesting quote from Elon Musk is first you have to place the atom. First you have to know how to place the atoms, then you have to do it. So
Easier said than done.
right. So, but that's the thing, is that there are technologies now that can individually place atoms in a cellular structure, which is very crazy. But we have the technology to do it. It's just incredibly expensive and time consuming. And so figuring out how to do these things quicker, faster, and cheaper is the main goal. And Moore's Law, as an idea, is still functional, even if it might be, quote, dead. you still have people trying to make investments, and that's what Moore's Law really helped, is it shows that, hey, every 2 years or so, we are going to get about twice as fast or twice as much density, or a combination of these things, because that's what's happening now, is that as we get smaller and smaller, you have trade-offs. Because if you get very small, well, you can either increase the clock speed, or you can try to actually use fewer, smaller transistors that have less heat but produce the same amount of processing power. And for some things, do you really need the massive supercomputer, or do you just need a normal pocket calculator?
So the thought of it being kind of just a business cycle of Moore's Law, as you noted, it applies to other aspects instead of just transistor development. It'd be neat to kind of see how Moore's Law plays out, that doubling of how Amazon started just selling books back in the day in the 90s, right? And now how they are the online marketplace.
Right. And I mean, you have companies like Amazon, Google that are investing into these quantum computers that are actually, I mean, they're heavily invested. Amazon is into Moore's Law, into actually creating computers and data centers that take less electricity and produce less heat and affect the environment less. You have companies that are actually concerned with their footprint in this whole situation. And Moore's Law, actually, we don't always need to move faster and faster, but it can produce something that is more economical.
So it's interesting how we're kind of looking at this topic today, Jeremy. It's like I'm defaulting to this business lens is kind of where I want to go with the conversation. You're bringing it back. So Amazon's exciting when you think about the business cycle, but also, as you said, about just the actual transistor processing power they've utilized. If you look at one of the major drivers of Facebook is their ability to have these environments that are processing transactions and activities faster than their competitors. So the ability to actually fulfill that order as soon as you click, as soon as you ask for it, it's checked out, you have an email, you have a contact, that it's on its way, is powerful. And that is all transistors, that is all processing power. So to have those server farms, to have that backbone of the cloud in place, that's the right perspective. You know, that has been the business model that has propelled firms like Amazon.
Right, and that's really what I think secures these businesses' footholds. And something that's interesting is that the concept of Moore's Law, that you do have these computers getting stronger and faster, that if you have a company like Amazon that sits on their laurels, we have these very fast Intel computers, that are sitting back and being perfect for what we need. But a new competitor shows up, like AMD, makes a processor that is twice as fast. If Amazon doesn't upgrade, they could be left in the dust, because they might have a data center that is twice as large than their competitor that can perform just as much with half as many.
Right, so there is planning that's needed. It's not just the technology itself. So that brings that business perspective back in. So you have to have the right partners. You have to be utilizing the correct technology. One thing that was always interesting with Mark Zuckerberg at Facebook is how his interest in graphics cards. Others were trying to take a different approach. He saw the value in that of processing, of almost having this multitasking ability for the system to fulfill activities and then respond to the next activities all simultaneously.
And this might be why Jensen Huang from NVIDIA has said that Moore's Law is dead, because he's a guy that's producing graphics cards. He's a guy that's creating basically things that sidestep Moore's Law. You have these additional compute units that can operate for specialized purposes that, like your general, CPU doesn't need to do all of this extra work, so you can actually perform twice as many functions because you have this specialized piece of hardware that is doing all of your, graphics compute, or running your stock exchange or something like that.
And you almost need someone like that to say it's dead, to say we need a new framework in a positive manner to challenge others. So the thought of maybe someone like Elon Musk to say, the steps are saying it and then doing it, and taking that approach to transistor development is needed. It's less of those saying, well, Moore's Law is dead because we can't possibly double in 18 months anymore. The thought of taking a step back, saying, yes, we can, and we're going to utilize new technologies where we're going to double within 12 months now. So it's going to take a whole new approach with new partners, with new technologies to surpass that original guideline.
And a lot of different people are looking at it from a different lens too, because it's maybe not necessarily about doubling the number of transistors, but maybe it's about shrinking die sizes or being able to put the same amount in a smaller space. So it's a difference of doubling every 2 years to doing a 0.6 shrink. So it's maybe, it's
Still improvement.
it's
That's right.
improvement, but it's not quite exactly the same. And so, what's the difference if we're only, doubling every 2.5 years instead of every two? There's still progress being made. It's not just ending there. So it's no worries that even if Moore's law is dead, we're still okay.
So now, if you will, just kind of humor me, Jeremy, taking this lens, what about for the business perspective?
Sure.
How do you see this kind of champion out in the marketplace, the next Jeff Bezos, the next Zuckerbergs, the next Musks out there that are going to be encouraged to just look at things through a new lens and tackle projects with just unabandoned, just wide open enthusiasm to solve a business problem?
Well, you can't always look at everything like it's some set in stone law. Like just because Amazon's the biggest guy in town doesn't mean that you can't have someone come in with a better idea. And the bigger these things get, the harder they are to move. So if you're small, nimble, you can make adjustments and make changes. And you don't have to always focus on the same thing. You can find an innovation that is good enough for you.
So I thought of Amazon, how they made that purchase of, I'll let you say the Z word.
Zoox, I think is what it
Zoox.
is.
Yes,
Yes.
thank you. It sounds better when you say it. So the thought of not just providing an e-commerce environment that's better, but maybe, well, let's redefine the logistical process. Let's actually own more of that logistical step so that we can provide better service, more affordable service to the customer. So that's a creative way. So if there are companies out there, they can't just replicate Amazon because that's pretty hard to do. Maybe they can see an opportunity in that business pattern, or I should say in that business process, a pattern that can be improved. They could target that and become a player just off of that angle.
Right. Because, I mean, for a lot of things, it's sometimes important to be specialized. And I mean, in the same way with computers now, where we're sidestepping the need to have so many transistors with Moore's law and having these specialized compute units, you can do the same thing with a business. Do you need to have the Amazon approach where this encompassing giant that takes over everything? Well, maybe you can be good at one thing. Focus on that one thing that you're very good at, and that is really how you bring in business.
Right, and that might change your definition of success. Your definition of success may then become a goal of being bought by Amazon, right? Of you joining the team.
To bring it back to reality a little bit, and a little bit of local news, I've heard rumors that there might be talks of some what's the word? Some anti-monopoly type suits against Google, Amazon, Facebook, and the likes. I mean, you have people out there that are thinking that is Facebook, is Amazon, is Google possibly stifling the competition? And if you clear that ground, where does that kind of leave the rest of the business scape? Because if you don't have Google, then what is Google broken up into?
Right, and it's going to become even more so as these companies look to take a bigger piece of this larger tech pie. You start seeing these companies, say like Amazon, that provides e-commerce products, now owning a ride share possibility where they can then get an Uber or a Lyft play on things. Yeah. And you see some of these firms wanting to purchase a provider where they can then provide goods. Just hearing the other day, Publix now within 2 hours can provide a service. So through Instacart.
Right.
And I know there are other stores like Big Lots and others that are making some positive strides by just partnering. So you become really good at that. You can then be an enabler for other firms to compete.
Well, it becomes a very good situation where rather than the Amazon approach of just acquiring this company, well, maybe you make a partnership with this other company. You don't have to carry all of those capital costs and risks. Instead, you can allow this partner to make a cut of the money, but take some of that risk away from you. And that's the good thing there, where Publix is good at doing groceries. They don't necessarily have to be good at making deliveries.
That's right. And so the chance to partner with someone like Instacart gives them the ability to maintain a focus on what they do well and then to branch out and to provide a new opportunity for their customers, a better service, if you will. So we need to see, maybe that's how technology will impact the marketplace going forward, is you'll just see better service opportunities for customers, which is a win.
And it's interesting because it's not only service opportunities, but it's job opportunities for customers as well, because you can simultaneously be a customer of Publix, but also work for Publix, right? So you can have people in this more open economy that's a bit more decentralized with these gig economy networks and things like that, where, maybe you don't really break up Google, but Google is like this platform where everybody kind of can reap the benefits from.
Wow, Jeremy, what an exciting topic. So Moore's Law, remember studying in college, and it's something we always see in literature. But Moore's Law, in a sense, is dead and it's not dead. So it is something that will live on.
Moore's Law is kind of like a zombie, and it's just going
Right.
out there and increasing in numbers over and over.
Are you setting us up for our topic next week? I mean, come on.
Maybe, we'll see.
Well, we'd like to thank Chipola College also for sponsoring, for the many opportunities we have to work with stakeholders online and locally. So thank you again, Chipola College. And Jeremy, thank you, sir, for a great topic and
Thank
for
you.
sharing this Tech Over Coffee podcast.
It's always fun.
Bye, everyone.